Juan Soto. That's the name that people keep talking about for the Mets. Is that a real possibility?
Can they? If there's a they or a he that can, it would be Steve Cohen who can.
SeatGeek, and thanks to our friend Casey Stern for joining the program, the host, of course, of the Unfiltered podcast. We appreciate a big Mets fan, a big Islanders fan, apparently, based on what's behind you right now. Casey, welcome, my friend. AJ wants to know if the grimace is going to continue to help the New York Mets. What has been your overall takeaway about the Mets so far this season? Still in it, like most National League teams are, but what do they need to do?
Well, I think at the beginning, they kind of looked as I expected. I mean, this wasn't a very deep roster. You had Jose Quintana starting opening day, not having Kodai Senga. If I would have told you no Senga, Lindor doesn't get off well, McNeil doesn't perform well, issues throughout the rotation, Diaz wasn't good, then was injured, you lost Rayleigh for the year, and that they would have even before this stretch been 7-8 games below 500, it would have made sense. I think this is kind of where I expected them to be. The good thing about what's happened the last couple of weeks is regardless of the reasons, you go back 2-3 weeks ago, we got Jorge Lopez and throwing mitts and talking about how bad the team is, and it was the Mets are a joke all over again. And since, I mean, look, you got a team meeting with Lindor, they're 11-4, they've won 5 in a row, and they're back in the mix because everybody is in the wild card now, a game and a half out. But this is what mediocre teams do. They go up and they're down, win 8 out of 10, lose 8 out of 10. So I'm not really that surprised, especially going back to it again when you think about the injuries they've had and you think about Senga specifically not being there.
What is more of a true statement? The Mets are just a 500 team, or the Mets will Met and they're just going to do what they do year in and year out and give a expectation fail?
Yeah, I mean, look, Eric, that's kind of what they've done, right? As soon as we were ready to laugh them off, this is what the Mets have done to Met fans, and I know putting us into therapy for our entire lives, because then they kind of reel you back in and they do what they do. I think they're kind of a mediocre team. The question now is how much David Stearns is going to put his footprint on things, because if you go into kind of what the Mets normally do, they'll look at this and say, okay, look, we're in it now. We're going to get Senga back, right? Bullpen session Wednesday, then live hitters. Everything is rosy. We won't move Alonso. We won't move JD Martinez, who's not doing anything for us except giving us all the potential right now to go get something for him at the deadline. And we're going to go add, or we're going to keep things the way they are. And then the Mets aren't going to make the playoffs. They're not going to be good enough to sustain this, and they won't get anything for it. I think this is going to be a real question to see, are we in a game-changing scenario with David Stearns? Because if you are, then I think you're staring that New York media and that fan base in the face, and you're being honest and saying, we need to go ahead and think about moving Alonso, moving JD Martinez, and thinking about the future, because the Mets right now are not a good baseball team, despite the fact that they're on this recent stretch.
But what if they make the playoffs? What if they make the playoffs in the wild card by a game? Could this set the organization back like a year or 2 years? Like, could it be that? Are we talking that catastrophic?
I don't know if it's catastrophic, but think about all the differences. You guys know this. You're not playing young kids down the stretch, right? If you're in a situation like that. So now when you look at some of the kids that they've gotten in these trades and the good moves that they've made, they're not getting that time at the end of the season to then look ahead to understand about next year if they're going to be ready at the start of the season for opening day. And you're thinking about playing older players. You're thinking about doing things to go and win now. And I think when you're a Mets team that brings in David Stearns, you got a new manager in Carlos Mendoza, who's done a fine job, all things considered, what he's had to deal with. To your point, they may be better off moving on from these players. So this may not be the greatest thing. Let's not forget, the Angels in the worst deadline I've ever seen basically let 2 weeks where they kind of played okay, allow them to not move an Ohtani who was healthy at the time, who could pitch and hit and was doing both in the same game, and got nothing for him. The Mets need to be smart about this, so it might not be the best thing for their future that they're kind of hanging around right now, the muffin tops of the playoffs.
Do they have enough cachet in the city of New York with Met fans to be like, hey guys, I know we're 3.5 out, but we're going to sell? Do they have they built up enough? Has Stevie Cohen built up enough, or no matter what, if they don't trade, they're going to be pissed, and if they do trade, they're going to be more pissed?
I'm going to do what I do with my kids. No. I mean, really. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they had the cachet, right? Because when Steve Cohen came in, everything looked rosy. We're going to win the World Series within 3 years, and we spent all the money, and it didn't work out. I think they did a nice job at the deadline last year, kind of eating it a bit, right? And owning all of that money to go ahead and get prospects. But you can't do that and handle the offseason the way they did. Let's not forget, one guy they went after was Yamamoto, offered him $320 million. I get that for long term. But outside of that, they kind of stayed within the margins because they know what this roster is and what it isn't. But now they're really up against it because when you look at the way JD has played, and Martinez has been great, and you think about Pete Alonso, who himself is getting hot a little bit as we get to the deadline a few weeks away, they're going to have a serious thought and a real conversation about whether or not they're about to disappoint their fans. Because to your point, the fans would rather have a chance and be forced to believe and then get hurt all over again and be heartbroken, which is what happens to them every year, I know.
I know you do. You're a long-standing, insufferable, suffering Mets fan, Casey Stern. You are. So from a fan perspective, I guess, would you want them to sign Pete Alonso to a long-term deal? Homegrown guy, has meant a lot to that organization, obviously hits 30 bombs a year. Or would you like to sacrifice it, let him go to rebuild for the future? They need more than just a first baseman.
Well, your point, Alana, is well taken because really the problem is even with Pete Alonso, they're not nearly good enough. But it also doesn't mean that they're not worse off without him because they are. So is he a better player than Olsen or Freddie Freeman? Of course not. But he's going to get paid probably north of $200 million. And the team that really owes and needs him the most and should pay him the most are the Mets because they know what he already gives them. And Steve Cohen has an exorbitant amount of money to go add beyond that. It's not about that. The problem is if you get the temperature right now and you're taking it and thinking there's no way he's not going out to free agency, then even as a rental, you've got to play this thing out and see whether it be the Cubs or whoever, other teams that could be interested. But it's not a simple question. It's going to be about what they're being offered and how much they can get. And to people who are saying, lastly, people were saying, in New York, like the Yankees, when they had a situation where, Chapman left and then he came back after they traded him free agency. Most players of the length of contract Alonso's looking at, when you move them, they don't feel all warm and fuzzy. They go out to free agency and probably don't come back. So I think if they trade him, the chances they'd re-sign him in free agency are very slim to none.
FT is headed to the MLB All-Star Game this year, and there's only one way you should be finding tickets for any ball game. SeatGeek is the official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, so they have you covered for all of your baseball ticket needs.
I'm super pumped to hit the Futures game this year. That new skills competition looks electric.
I agree, Kratz. It's like the Olympics for baseball. Cannot wait to see that. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. Baseball season's in full swing, and you don't want to miss out. SeatGeek has your tickets to every game and, of course, concerts, festivals, and more.
Every ticket's backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps.
And Kratz, FT came through for the people. Use our code FOUL for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code FOUL. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app, please.
Hey, what? We're talking about the Mets, and you're talking about free agency. Juan Soto, that's the name that people keep talking about for the Mets. Is that a real possibility? And could they afford Alonso and Soto? Because we had this conversation last week, and I brought this up. I talked to some people in London about this. If the Mets don't enter the Soto sweepstakes, who's another team for him? There's not really another team out there that will overpay for him. So can they afford Alonso and Soto, or will they have to make that decision?
Well, I think obviously you're dealing with tax and all sorts of things that would bother people like us, but not Steve Cohen, right? I mean, he's got tons of money. So I think, can they? If there's a they or a he that can, it would be Steve Cohen who can. I think to me, the thing that's being forgotten is, the Yankees didn't bring in Juan Soto just to kind of hang out with him for a year. They brought him in to win with him now, but to woo him, and they're doing all of that. And the fans and the media and everything that he's experiencing right now are doing all of that. And it's not like the Yankees don't have money or can't spend money. So to me, I think the thing that's being forgotten is this idea that if there's a team that can go get him, it's the Mets. I don't know what the difference in money would be, AJ, but why the heck am I going to play for the Mets where I have no idea what my future is with that team? I'm looking at what happened since Lindor's side. I'm looking at all the different issues, go to the Scherzers and the Verlanders and on forever down the line, even way before Steve Cohen. And with the Yankees, even though they haven't won in a while, they're in it all the time. They have a chance to win all the time, and it's the Bronx and it's the Yankees. The Mets are the little brother, not the big brother. So I think the Yankees are still dangerous player in this thing, but I do expect that Steve Cohen, like with Yamamoto, going back to that, remember, he offered $320. It's not good enough. You might have to offer $420 to get somebody to come to the Mets instead of go to the Dodgers. Well, what's the difference going to be between the Mets and the Yankees? We'll find out in free agency.
Yeah, that's what will get them to the Mets. You said what will get them there? Well, $50 extra million probably would do it.
That's right.
Just saying.
That's right.
And the fact that you could sell Soto, on the fact that you would be a long list of superstars at the Yankees, you could be the franchise, the greatest player ever, and take them to a World Series, which would make Mets fans love you forever. But you also missed out one team that I want to talk about that could pay for them, but will not because they have short arms to get in those deep pockets. The Red Sox. The Red Sox. Like, how much greater of an ending to your Netflix doc would it be to see, oh, and at the end of this season, the Red Sox missed out, but, you know, the little forward or whatever, the post log, whatever it is at the end of the movie, they go, signed Juan Soto. The future is bright. Whatever it is.
They better go ahead and pay AC Alex Cora first and make sure that happens, because to your point, well, look, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think they certainly should. And, you know, look, we talk about the Yankees, right? Forget about Soto, and I love Booney, but if the Yankees don't do what they're supposed to do, Alex Cora is going to have options there, LA, whoever he wants. But to me, this is really the story of the Red Sox that nobody are talking about. We all talk about the surprises. I think clearly the Guardians, what a job they've done. You think about that whole Central Division, the AL side, the Brewers in the NL, wherever you want to go. To me, the Red Sox, this was a joke. When we heard about the Netflix doc, and I covered baseball in Boston, it was amazing back in 2004. This is not a story anybody wanted to see in 2024. And regardless of the fact that they've had great stories like Hal, can you think about Hamilton yesterday, 4 steals, and they had 9 a franchise mark. The way that Alex Cora has squeezed as much as you can out of this orange and the job that he has done, they're sitting there, a couple of games, 2-3 games out of a wild card. They're over 500. You'll get some meaningful games possibly at Fenway Park. And to me, the Red Sox have to be one of the better stories, and they do have money. But the Red Sox question, to your point, going back to a comment you made leading into the question, it's not about do they, it's about will they. We know they can spend money. They don't seem to want to put in the dinero, if you will, into this baseball team, which is why we expect no Soto, no Alex Cora, and no playoffs.
Let me ask you this though, Casey. You're certainly not the first person that I've heard say this about Alex Cora having opportunities to go elsewhere, Yankees and Dodgers. Who says that Alex Cora would go to the Dodgers? Who said that the Dodgers would even let Dave Roberts go? I mean, I understand that if Dave doesn't win a World Series and get past the first round again, there could be speculation, but the man has the winningest record in all of baseball among active guys. He's taken them to the postseason every single year. Why? And don't forget, Alex Cora was involved in the 17 and 18 mess against the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I don't know that LA is a landing spot for Alex. Where is this coming from?
Well, I would say this. First of all, 2 things. One, I love Doc to death. And Dave Roberts has done a hell of a job with this baseball team and now is set again with all these injuries. So I'm not saying that he deserves to lose his job. I'm just saying that we understand the tenor of the pressure you're under, especially when you bring in Yamamoto. I know he's now injured, and Ohtani, et cetera, on down the line. So when you think about that, the ties of Alex having played there, the fact that big markets, if they're going to let go of a Dave Roberts, the only reason you would do that would be to bring in somebody that you think is better. I think that's where kind of the thought lies. I mean, look, Alex Cora has put himself in a position where it's hard to take the 17-18 mess out. But if you put it aside and you think about just managing in terms of baseball, what hasn't he done since the time where he was sitting there on the bench behind A.J. Hinch, and then when he took the job and went to Boston, and what he's done since he's returned, proven one of the best managers in the game. So I think to me it's more about opportunities for big markets where there's a lot of pressure. For me, Aaron Boone belongs still with the Yankees, and Doc definitely belongs still with the Dodgers. But we all know how this thing works. I mean, look, Rossi should still be with the Cubs and not losing his job to go get Craig Counsell. But we all knew that Craig Counsell was a guy that if you have a chance to get, teams are going to do what it takes to go try and get him. Alex Cora has put himself on that list as well.
Casey, that brings up a great point, which actually leads me to my next question for you. The whole situation, somewhere, David Ross is laughing his ass off, right? Because doesn't even know that he's going to lose his job, thought for all intents and purposes he was coming back. And then, oh, by the way, here comes Craig Counsell, which I get it. If I'm Craig Counsell, I'm taking that contract too. But I tell you what, the Brewers are looking pretty good and the Cubs look like not so great, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, did the Cubs make the right move in that? Taking a guy that everyone thought was the second coming of the Messiah to manage their team when David Ross was doing a good job?
I think it's a loaded question. It's a good question. I think let's go to the first part. I don't think they're here in where they're at right now behind Milwaukee and kind of fumbling a bit because of Craig Counsell, or wouldn't be in this situation because if Rossi was there. I think it's the roster not being as good as we thought and guys not being as in terms of performing to the level that they would have thought to this point in the season. I think that's more of the issue. The other part is, look, I mean, if you look at the situation that the Cubs had, a young team that was gelling with a manager who seemed to be the right fit, it didn't make sense to me. However, if you're looking at Craig Counsell, who didn't think that he wasn't a guy that was, to me, he was the managing version, Alana, of like what we looked at when we looked at Andrew Friedman with Tampa Bay, where we're like, look at what this guy is doing. Imagine if you put him in a place, right, where he had money. Well, look what the heck Craig Counsell was doing. Look at the guys they were bringing him in at the deadline. Nothing against them personally, but they weren't ever making big moves at all. And there he was at one point sitting there a win away in an LCS against the Dodgers from getting to a World Series. I think it was a no-brainer to try. I don't like the way they did it. And I think clearly if you're Rossi right now, you're laughing a little bit because the Brewers, give them credit. It wasn't all Craig Counsell. It wasn't all David Stearns. There must be something in the water that's working right now in the brats in Milwaukee because they're still getting it done, just like Cleveland without Tito is still getting it done with Stephen Vogt.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. We appreciate you, Casey. I had to get on the Dodgers train there for a second because everyone keeps saying that Alex Cora is going to LA, and I refuse to believe that. Not that I love AC. I love Doc too. So, Casey, thank you for the insight. We appreciate it, my friend.
Anytime. Happy to be on. Be well.
We have some fun stuff coming up, you and I, you guys. We're going to head to Chicago, and we're going to be part of a NASCAR event. It's going to be a good time. I can't wait for this. It's July 6th and 7th. It's a racing and music experience at Grant Park in Chicago. One of the best cities in the summer, Chicago is. There's going to be a performance from Keith Urban, the Chainsmokers, the Black Keys, and Lauren Elena. So that's awesome if you're into country music. We're going to do a special race day foul territory. I got lucky because Scott's off, so I get to go with you guys. From there at 11 a.m. Central Time on July 7th. From site, it's going to be me, and it's going to be AJ, and it's going to be Kip. Jason Kipnis is going to be there. Sorry that you can't go, Kratzy. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe I took your seat. I don't know.
No. I just didn't get invited. There's part sometimes when they make the starting lineup, you don't get to play 10 players. So I assume that I'm the fourth best option on this. So I never got invited.
Oh well, I'm sorry. You'll be there in spirit. I'm psyched. I'm psyched I get to go. I'm not going to lie about that. So huge country music fan. It'll be fun to be there at the event. We're going to be doing a show live from Grant Park. It's going to be super, super cool. So join us if you can. That'd be great.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.